Welcome to volume 54 of Ask a Brit. We've been on hiatus with this particular show for quite a while just because I've been... Yeah, boo-hoo, but we are back now, as you can see, and there's a good time, actually, this is a good time to return, because coming up in November is the 10-year anniversary of me living in the United States with Tara. What do you mean, no? Are you unhappy with that idea?
Yes.
Good. And so in the week, I asked a number of people, just people who follow me on Instagram and Twitter and Facebook, to send me their questions so that we can get this thing kicked off again. And we got about 100 questions, so I had to cut it down markedly so. But those questions are going to pertain, hopefully, to my 10 years in the United States. What have I learned? What have I lost? What do I miss? That kind of shit. Not shit. It's all good stuff. So we're going to get right in. Let's get to the first questions, starting with the first question. Okay, the first question comes from Mag Emelado. I think I'm pronouncing that. There's an underscore in there. From Instagram. And Mag asks, how do you cope with the significantly short annual leave? It's no longer as much of a problem as it used to be when I first moved here, because my company actually provides PTO. It's built into their health benefits. Is that what you would say? Health benefit. It's not in the health benefit, just in the benefits in general, although PTO is a health benefit. But when I first moved here, no, my company did not necessarily offer that. Not the company that I currently work for, a completely different one. And so I didn't have any kind of time off that was applicable to me in the way that it would be back in the UK, where you get 28 days, I think it is, of mandated time off. So I sure did miss that. And the next question comes from Froggy Mrs. US. This is also on Instagram. A lot of these questions are on Instagram because that's where I put the Ask a Brit question out first in my stories. If you haven't seen that yet, go to my Instagram page at Lost in the Pond, and you can click on the little Ask a Brit icon there, and you'll be able to pull up the latest Ask a Brit question. But Froggy Mrs. US asks, what were the hardest things to get used to in the USA? And you might see a theme running throughout this particular episode in terms of things like this. And I think the thing that's still hardest to get used to is the bloody weather, wouldn't you say? Especially living in Chicago. Winter is coming, as they say. She loves it because she loves the bloody snow. I've said bloody 3 times now. Are you counting? I think it's 3, including that clarification there. I'm not so keen on the winters. I did a video about that many moons ago, a year ago. That's not many moons ago, but it did happen. And I'm not looking forward to it. I do like American fall, conversely, so I should state that. But the winters are a bit much. It was nice to be out in San Francisco earlier this year, away from it all. I wish I could be there right now in some respects. No, not now, in December, when the bloody snow hits. I've said bloody 4 times. Can we curtail this? Otherwise, YouTube won't pay me. Actually, they will, because they don't recognize bloody as a swear word, which is nice. I clarified it. Here in the US, they don't. They do in the UK. Tara asks on Instagram, how much do you love your wife? That's you.
Yeah.
Putting me on the spot in front of millions, thousands, hundreds, let's be honest. In reverse order from what I just said, I went down from millions down to hundreds, but there was thousands in the middle. You're sort of that middle bit. Thousands.
You love me thousands.
1,000 millions is what I mean. Times infinity. So that's... Next question comes from Judy Reyes. Judy, thank you for your question. Are you going to become a US citizen? Unclear at this point. Don't know. Lots of things up in the air. I'm happy being a resident, but it does mean I don't get to vote, for instance, in the congressional elections coming up in November or in any other elections that we might have. So that is one thing, and I can't run for office, of course, not that I plan to. I'm not really the political type when it comes to it being my job, I suppose.
Why not?
Why not indeed?
I mean, there are some interesting ones out there right now.
I could be mayor. Back to the Future reference. I'm not going to do that. It's unlikely, and I don't know. I mean, I'm not going to kick the idea of becoming a citizen completely out of the window, but it's not at the forefront of my mind. Like I said, I'm happy being a resident. I think I get most of the perks of being a citizen just without the ability to vote. I pay taxes, and I contribute to the U.S. economy. So I have every right to have my say on the issue, and of course I do because it's my issue. Anyway, Jay Hightower Mills, and this starts off a kind of a pattern of similar questions around this idea. Jay Hightower Mills asked on Instagram, what is the most surprising personal change in the last decade for me? And I would say, without a doubt, it's dietary related. I think when I moved here, I was already a little bit heavier, on the heavier side. And of course, you're moving to a country that is well renowned for its obesity levels. And I started to see why those obesity levels were quite high. So you're living in a country of free refills. You're living in a country where portion sizes are quite a bit bigger than what I was used to back home. So my fear actually was that I would balloon, in other words. And at around 2015, I decided to do something about that, and I gave up Coca-Cola, pop, and all of that. So I no longer have free refills, except on coffee, which brings its own dangers, heart attack and all that. I'm fine. Just keeps me awake at night. That's all. If you follow me on Twitter, you'll know that I stay awake at night because I post at 2 a.m. Sometimes I schedule those tweets to get around that. But no, just going back, I stopped drinking pop, and I've not touched it since. And I think that I've managed to sort of, reinvent my diet in many ways, and I eat way more vegetables now than I ever did. So that's the personal change. But on Instagram, Jeff Granberry and Gloria Minich, my friend Gloria, and also on Facebook, Pama Lee Bennett, all ask a similar question around the idea of what is the biggest change you've noticed about Americans and America, specifically since you've been here. I think it would be hard to argue that this one is not the political change that we've seen. We have to remember, I moved here 5 days after the election of Barack Obama becoming president. And in that time, I was here for the entirety of his presidency. And now, of course, since he's left as well. And we've seen sort of I want to say a marked divide that has grown between people on right and on left, and there just doesn't seem to be this ability among, people online mainly, I think it is, to agree as we were able to do in the past. And I wish we could return to those days.
I don't even know about agreeing as much as I do about the idea of agreeing to disagree.
Yeah, agreeing to disagree.
People are vitriolic.
Yes. I would love to see a return to civility. But maybe it's going to take some time. That's all I will say on that. Okay, so now we were just speaking about food. Let's get onto those questions. All right, first food-related question. This comes from my friend Aaron Pagelman on Instagram, who asks, worst American food that you now love? And I said to him on Instagram, I think it is, in fact, Arby's roast beef sandwiches. Possibly. I would argue they're not that terrible in many ways, but they were something that I'd never had before, of course. We don't really have Arby's in the UK, and since I've lived here, I've grown to rather love it. Courtney Blossy, also on Instagram, Courtney asks, if you had to choose, would you choose British food or American food? And as I said on Twitter, and I'm going to have to pull this up because I don't want to misquote myself. As I said on Twitter the other day, I think that it's a tough choice, but to me, nothing feels better than slurping down a piping hot cock-a-leaky, devouring some toad in the hole, or gobbling up a gorgeous helping of spotted dick with extra dollops of custard, of course. So that sounded dirtier than it should have. But that's it. I think British food, but it's a nostalgic thing. I think that most people from the US, for example, if you were to ask them that question, even if they'd spent years in England, they might well say on the whole American food, because let's face it, we're not exactly, either country is not exactly France or Italy when it comes to its gourmet meals, but there are some nice ones in there. American food, just another shout out, as I often do, especially at this time of year, to
Pumpkin.
No, that's definitely the worst thing ever. To pecan pie. How do you pronounce it? Let me know below. Hashtag pecan pie / fall Thanksgiving, whatever. Deborah, are you all right? Oh, you've dropped your hair curly thing. What is that? Roller. I don't know. She's rolling her hair while doing this, multitasking. That's something I can't do. And I've tried it. The last time I rolled my hair, I've never rolled my hair. Don't get into that. Deborah Plester from Facebook. What foods do you miss from England? I think hands down Yorkshire pudding. And the reason I say that is it's not that Yorkshire pudding is necessarily my favourite British food of all time, although it is up there. I would say it because it's sort of hard to find here. Now, if you happen to be married to somebody who's very diligent and very talented chef, she's not a chef, you're not qualified as a chef, but she is a good cook. And Tara makes the most exquisite Yorkshire puddings. Does that get me in your good books now after the comment I made about your hair? 1,000 million times infinity. That's how good your Yorkshire puddings are too. Let's not forget that. And that's what I miss most. And then Lisa Dor Pozos, who was a former colleague of mine. There's a load of people that I know who are asking me questions this week. That's what happens when you ask the questions on social media. Weirdest American food / food trend. I wouldn't say Arby's roast beef. I think this is a different category of question. I think I would say the weirdest I found is Sloppy Joe, and it's also terrible for you. Let's be honest.
Sure that's a food trend?
Not a food trend, but I mean it was but she asked weirdest American food / food trend. If you can think of a food trend, throw it my way. Don't literally throw it. Cover me in splattered
We really like
gunk.
avocado toast, but I don't think that's a weird food trend.
It's a millennial trend.
What about the glitter latte that we had?
She drank glitter from Starbucks. It was coffee filled with glitter. I can't get past that. Pumpkin spice lattes. Pumpkin.
Really nice.
No. Pumpkin spice lattes. That's where it isn't at.
When it's been around for 10 years, is it really a trend anymore?
Well, it's trendy still.
I just love them.
And they trend on Twitter. Okay, let's get on to, speaking of stereotypes, let's get on to that very subject. Stereotypes. Obviously, stereotypes do come with the territory, and with that being the case, a question from Eleanor Mace on Twitter, and Eleanor asks, Americans have a lot of stereotypes about British people. Do you think any of them are true? Same question, reversed. Stereotypes are an odd thing, aren't they? Because you can always find people or places or things that sort of debunk those stereotypes in some way. So, for instance, the perfectly white teeth that Americans always have in movies are not necessarily, true to real life. I've seen some dental nightmares, I think, but that's because I keep an eye out for them. I'm on the lookout for bad teeth because I want some solidarity, as it were. I don't know why I did that with my fist, but I can do worse things with I could punch a man. Anyway, so I don't know if there are any that I can think of as being true. I think the American directness thing is quite true. I think, broadly speaking, and it's just because of the language of American English. You know, you're more likely to go into a shop or wherever and ask for some cigarettes. I don't smoke, but let's say I did, and you're more likely to go, "Can I get a pack of Benson and Hedges?" I don't know what kind of cigarettes you do in the US.
I don't smoke. Don't point at me.
I'm just asking, all right? Whereas I think we're more, we're more indirect in that line of questioning in England. It's often joked that we might, go out of our way to be insanely polite about that question. In other words, would it be possible if maybe I could have that packet of cigarettes? No one would actually do that, would they? I hope not.
Ask for a whole pack of cigarettes?
No, the manner of the question in that they would, fudge it up with, fudge is the wrong word, they would pack it up with a bunch of politeness words. Could I possibly maybe have? We wouldn't.
Cigarette. Yeah, they would.
The cigarette's unimportant. It's about the way they ask it.
Yeah, they do that.
No, they don't. But they wouldn't do that in a shop, store.
Oh, well, maybe not. Unless you know the person, right? Which is awkward.
I don't know myself at this point. So, but I think it is. I think if any stereotype is true, it is that sort of directness in Americans. I think it's less true. There's this whole idea that British people are super polite. And I think some of them are, of course, just like some Americans are and some Swedish people. But I don't think that they are, like by far and away more polite than any other nation on the planet. In fact, I've encountered in my time some rather unsavory characters who are not polite at all. It's a tough question to answer. But similarly, Jerry Repash asks on Facebook, how has your experience living in the US helped you understand the American people differently from the TV and movie stereotypes? I would say, Jerry, that I've come to find not everybody owns a really expansive New York apartment. Go figure, because they're not all in New York, which makes sense. And not everybody has a swimming pool. What I'm saying is most people aren't rich, not filthy rich, right?
We're not.
No, but shows like Friends, Frasier, Sex in the City, they're all in New York City. They all seem wealthy and having a good time and all that. They must have had a point in their lives where they were hard up and just living on the streets. Not the streets.
I don't know. It was the 90s.
It was a prosperous era, no doubt. But still, it seemed to give off this impression that there weren't just sort of regular families that were just living paycheck to paycheck, or they were just living, let's say, out in the middle of nowhere. And in fact, when we did get that representation, it was usually through the guise of horror, or these families that live out there, like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre. They're not to be trusted. But some of the nicest people I've met have lived in rural communities in this very country. I'm just saying they don't get represented enough. I'm getting a bit passionate about that. Okay, and speaking actually of geography, that brings us on to, I guess, a part that we're going to do on geography. That was the worst transition I've ever done.
I like that transition.
Panache Malloy on Instagram asks, if you had to relocate from the Midwest, which region would you move to? And also, sort of in line with that question on Facebook, Erin, a friend of mine also, asks, where do you have yet to visit in the US that you absolutely feel you must? And the reason I say these are similar questions is that my answer to both is the same answer. It would be Seattle. I was fortunate, if you want to call it that, to have a layover in Seattle earlier this year on the way to San Francisco, and I did get some coffee at this place. It's called Starbucks. It's one of the local places.
TSL.
Didn't get one of those. Thankfully, it was summer, and that crap didn't exist at that time. And but I'd love to live there, and I'd love to visit there, preferably in not in that order. I'd like to visit first to see if I do like it, and then. But it's the weather thing for the most part, and coffee. The weather is very similar to that of Britain. And the next question came to me on Instagram from Linda Fair. And what region of the US has been your favorite in terms of places I've actually been? And I answered her with San Francisco. And I think that in many ways, I don't know, it's a tough one because we went there actually the day after we put down my cat. So we were kind of sad while we were there, but it sort of heightened the emotion or the experience in many weird ways, in a kind of escapist way, I think. And but I've always wanted to go there. And just like with Seattle, I got this sense of British weather while I was there. And this was in June or July, even July 4th. So it was nice to be away from Chicago during that time and to experience a part of America that delivers climate that I am used to. And the next question comes from Birdie. This is also this is on Twitter. I say also, we've only had two from there. And Birdie asks, favorite place in the US and UK to visit? Well, obviously in the US, as I said, it would be Seattle if I got to go there, and it was San Francisco, having been there. In the UK, I've said this before, I'll say it again, I don't think it changes, is the city of York. It's my favorite city in the entire UK. I say it's my favorite place to visit. I think it's on par with the Lake District, which you would categorize as a district, I suppose, is definitely one of my favourite places. So the York and the Lake District, I think. I'd happily live in York because then I could commute to the Lake District via train. That segues us into our final batch of questions, those being on my home country of the UK. And it's one question, but it came from 4 people. And those 4 people, because you really need to be recognized here, Milos or Milos, Mystor, SoCal, LA Rockagal, Slave to Cat, and Tim Hazelden. How do you pronounce that?
Slave to Cat is the name of the day.
Because that person follows you on Instagram?
No, I just love it.
Oh, okay.
But you can if you want.
Okay. I was going to say, actually, that Panache Malloy is the YouTube name of the week, although she's on Instagram. But Tim Haselden is on Facebook, and they all ask, have you ever wished to move back to the UK, and have you got any sense of being homesick? We've talked about it. We've definitely talked about moving back to the UK, specifically, actually, to somewhere like York, and also the thought of retiring in the Lake District is one that is nice. As you can probably tell, I'm nowhere near retirement age.
Well, we're millennials. We'll never retire.
I'm not a millennial.
Well, you're in that weird micro.
It's not even micro at this point. I am a Gen Xer.
No, he's not.
So we've talked about it, but it's just one of these things where we say, yes, let's do it, and we get really gung-ho about it. We even start looking at jobs overseas, and then we forget about it, and we're fine, we're happy here. I am happy here. That's something that should be stated, but I don't know. It's definitely something we've talked about, but in terms of homesickness, I don't know. I mean, I miss my family and friends and all of that, and I do miss the British way of life. So I suppose in that sense there is a certain level of homesickness, but I've somewhat made a life here, so you go through your day forgetting it. Plus, I do this YouTube channel and I do my blog, and so I keep in touch with people that are Englishly inclined, as it were. So in a way, it almost feels like I'm not away. It probably sounds very strange to say, but that's sort of how I feel. So homesickness it's an interesting thing to think about, because I was, when I first moved here, I think. Well, I say that the first 6 months, it was a novelty living here. It was, but after that, I think there was a period where I just thought I've no idea what I'm doing in this country, in the middle of nowhere. And so apart from that, I don't think I've been massively homesick. Now, if somebody put a ticket in my hand and Tara's hand and the cat's, not the cat, he can stay, and said, let's go there now, I'd take it in a heartbeat. But other than that, I don't know. There's no massive urgency, although we do want to go visit. So hopefully we will do that soon. That is it for this episode of Ask a Brit. It's great to be back. I've really missed doing this, and you should expect to see more of this. I will say that we're going to be doing this on a monthly basis now, so you'll see it once a month. And the questions, I won't be posting at the end of the video anymore. I think that's how we did it before. I liked it, but I just want to try something new. I want to try to talk to my communities on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and also here on YouTube. So we have the community section on YouTube, and I will be posting the next question at some point, and it'll probably be about a week before the next show goes out. So stay tuned for that. Stay on the lookout for that. But if you haven't had the chance to follow us yet on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, you can do that very thing by following all 3 of those. And until next time, keep me in your thoughts. Don't. I'm fine. And have fun. Have a good time. Have a good fall and a good Thanksgiving. I'll see you before then. I won't literally see you. That would be weird. Bye. Thank you for watching this episode of Ask a Brit. Don't forget to hit my stupid little face to subscribe, and please share this video with the world. Hit me up on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. And if you'd like to support this channel, please do so at patreon.com/lostinthepond.